This video consists of more stuff I've had to unlearn from feminism, and the target audience of this video is girls between ages 18 to 23, but specifically girls who are virgins. But generally speaking, if you're between the ages of 18 to 23, maybe 24, because I'm 24, I'm about to be 25 in a couple months, this one is made with those girls in mind. So I open it up right off the bat with a warning that this is not for feminist ears. I've been sharing on my channel that I've had to learn to let men lead as part of my walk with God, beginning with my dad, and listen to the men, which has meant unlearning a lot of the feminist ideologies that have crept into the Christian church. And the target audience of this is also Christian girls, but honestly, I think that any girl from 18 to 24 can benefit from hearing this. This has to do with other women and the types of women you should not be taking advice from at your age. And I, as I've shared in the last couple videos, had to learn this the very hard way, okay? So, as a 24-year-old virgin girl, I did not understand how much of a threat that I would be seen as by women of all different age brackets, but specifically those older than me, just for still choosing to be a virgin until who waited for marriage. I did not understand, because I didn't understand men, that this was very respectable for a young woman to choose to be a virgin until marriage. By the men. The men saw that as something worthy of respect. And women who were older than me who didn't wait, I've noticed that because I had this mindset until I learned this the hard way by going through mental health crisis, all of that. Other virgin girls, and I've developed such a low tolerance for other virgin women behaving like this. The same way that guys have like the incel thing, like people call guys who feel like they can't get any incels, there's like femcel. When I've talked to women who have been like older virgins or even around my age and they're still virgins, like online, they have almost like that very bitter femcel mindset, and I definitely used to struggle with this. And it's like, I've had to say it at least once where people they didn't like to hear it. If what you had as a woman in this area weren't priceless, there would not be so much competition, cattiness, and all the stuff that I went through just on my own journey. But it's like I had to learn that from my own experience of catty women. I don't think I could have been told that very simply. I had to live it. But to the best of my ability, I'm going to share what I've learned. And I'm also doing this minding my age, because I'm about to be 25, but listening to the men in places of influence are sharing openly that your most marriageable age when it comes to the dating world as a whole is between the ages of 18 to 24. And that's the number one thing that other women, your average other woman older than you, especially if you're a Christian girl surrounded by women from all walks of life, are not going to teach you. Other women in this feministized, this modern Christian church that has been heavily influenced by feminism, other women, what they're going to teach you is to have very feminist ideals and to focus on waiting and not on making early marriage and early nuclear family a priority. But when I stopped putting the women's opinions first and started prioritizing more what the men were saying, they were saying it's good for a woman to prioritize early marriage for her long-term welfare. And this, that's a whole thing. I can feel that I just open, a whole topic of conversation. But for those women who are between 18 to 23, if you're still paying attention, because I'm rambling, 18 to 23 or 24. These are the specific types of women that I have learned you should never take advice from at your age. The number one are the single moms. And that's what created the title of this video, Marry Before You Carry. Women who got pregnant out of wedlock, I did not understand this because I wasn't taught this, and also I'm a young Christian girl known as like the sweet Christian girl. I'm not the type of person who wanted to see people from walks of life different from mine and become judgmental and condescending, but I learned this the hard way. Single mothers will give you the worst advice at your ages. The older single moms who, you know, what the Bible calls the flower of their age has passed, and they're single mothers. And honestly, I'm even going to group in this the ones who got married after being single mothers for a time. These are not the people you, as a young 18 to 24-year-old childless woman who's never been married or had children, and if you're watching this, I hope this video reaches the virgin ones. You should never be taking advice from older single moms. You should never take their advice, because what I learned from letting go of what I thought were the perfect women's advice, like the women's advice that was faultless, because I wasn't raised to respect men's judgment and really started listening to the men. The men are warning the women that they don't want single mothers. The men are warning the women that among them, it's not a respectable thing for a man to play the role of stepdaddy to the child, to a child that he didn't sire. And I learned to respect this for this reason. As a virgin woman, I realized that taking those older single mothers' advice was putting me on track to become a single mother myself. Because you cannot teach from a place that you haven't produced fruit from. And I was consistently seeing, and again, I learned this through mental trauma, right? As I shared in the last video and the one before it. Single mothers who are older than you, especially if they were single mothers who are an older age and didn't marry until later, like after they had their kids, they have hit the wall. And they hit the wall not just in general, but with children. So of all the types of women that you're going to come across who have trouble, you know, finding a good man, who good men are the least likely to consider because they come not just with themselves but with children that aren't even that man's, which is opposite to the man's nature. Like, he wants to continue his bloodline, and it's emasculating inherently to have to you know, step in for another man's child that's not even his. This is another reason men value virginity, but again, that's another thing the older women aren't going to teach you because they're jealous and bitter. Older single mothers are going to counsel you from the position of, if they're still single, they're going to set their standards unreasonably high, and it's going to come out of nowhere. You're going to hear them set all these high standards for what they want in a man and act like every man is out of their league. And at first, when I was younger and more naive, I would hear it and I respected it because I just respected a woman standing up for herself and for what she deserved. But then I realized that these single mothers, while they were doing that, were also not respecting the effort, the pain, and all of the self-discipline that it took for me as a virgin girl to wait for marriage and not expect a man to take care of a child that wasn't his. And so I have learned from experience that respect is earned, it's not just given when it comes to women. A woman, you should not just automatically respect the input and opinion of a woman who is your elder when you don't know who she is. It will save you so much because other women can be really predatory, especially when I'm talking about older women. They can be predatory when they see that you are a young, innocent girl who still have, it's like that saying, the world is your oyster. Older women who have hit the wall, especially if they're single mothers, they will see you as a threat and they will target you, to be very blunt. And what they're going to teach you to do is set your standards as unreasonably high as theirs are, but it's going to be for the wrong reasons. They're going to teach you to have a wrong delusional mindset about yourself, because what they're expecting in their minds is that I deserve, the best of the best. I have a kid, so I'm going to set my standards to this place. And it's not saying that they're not going to find a man who's willing to put up with all of that, because I've seen that happen too. I've seen men simp really hard for women like this. But what I am going to say is that for you as a virgin girl, and even for you as a childless woman, you should not be approaching your romantic prospects in life from the perspective, honoring like the perspective of a single mother and one who already had children as your own, because your lives are not the same. And so what I noticed was that these women, these older single moms who had already hit the wall, what they were teaching me to do, instead of teaching me to value my early self-discipline and value early marriage, to honor the self-discipline it was taking to be a virgin until marriage and do things right the first time, they were teaching me, you focus on yourself and serve the Lord, focus on serving the Lord however he wants you to right now. And when the time is right, God will send you the right person. But what they were actually doing and teaching me to do was, you can live whatever life you want, which is what I did. I didn't live for God in the past. I got knocked up in the past by men who weren't my husband. And, all the consequence that came with that. And I'm going to still expect God to send me a man who's willing to put up with all my junk and all the junk of a child that's not even his, or more than one child, because there are women who will expect men to put up with more than one child that's not theirs and still put all the investment. Reject this mind. If you are not a woman who has ever compromised yourself in that way, if you've never carried a baby for a man you've never been married to, if you have no children, and especially if you're still a virgin waiting for marriage who's never had children, do not take the advice of single mothers who have hit the wall. They are hiding bitterness and rivalry and jealousy and competition in their hearts. And even the ones who have been educated, even the ones you would think would have matured out of this childish mindset, the ones who have even, built their careers and, all of that, I'm telling you, feminism teaches you that women mature with self-reliance and, getting their money and education. That's what feminism teaches you, that if a woman isn't self-reliant and hasn't developed her own fiscal material success, that she's not a mature woman. I've dealt with so many women who are older than me who live, achieve the feminist definition of success, and they were still childish and jealous and rivalrous of me just for being a virgin, even when I to this day haven't finished a bachelor's degree. I went to college but experienced a health crisis and did not finish my degree. And even in my position, the simple fact that I was still a childless virgin who was still waiting for marriage, it didn't matter all the credentials that these older women had. If they were older, if they had hit the wall, even the younger ones who weren't virgins, that simple aspect of my innocence and the privilege that I had, even though it was something I worked for, it took self-discipline to say no and guard my heart and spirit and body by waiting for marriage. That didn't happen by accident, especially not in this society. Those older women would see that as a threat no matter what other accomplishments they had. And so when you're a young 18 to 23 to 24-year-old woman, you need to understand that you're in your prime. You are at the age where you can literally get any man you want. You are at the age that is, for men, they consider the most marriageable. And older women aren't going to teach you this because they're jealous and bitter that they hit the wall. And I even experienced this with older women who, specifically, I've been transparent, it's the ones who got ran through and who weren't even in their 30s yet. They still expressed this type of bitterness. They could have even been childless, but just their body counts embittered them towards women like me who were still younger. and still waiting for marriage and still hadn't gotten ran through and still were prioritizing self-discipline and setting the best foundation for marriage and motherhood, which is biblical, by the way, to put those things first. But again, the older women aren't going to teach you that's biblical. So that's another thing. Marry before you carry is one of the best sayings that I've ever heard. That's like, I see it as like a really good slogan regarding the importance of waiting for marriage. And I mean, not everyone uses it to talk about waiting for marriage, but I personally do. I think it's very practical. My mother's testimony was that she waited for my dad. She was a virgin until my dad, but they didn't wait for marriage before my mom got pregnant with me. And this did put a strain on their marriage and stuff. And so I was taught marry before you carry, even though not in those words, but I think it's an excellent phrase to explain it. So you don't end up, an old and bitter single mother giving younger women bad advice. Value your virginity, value your chastity. Don't, don't let any guy have access to your body if that guy is not your lawfully wedded husband. And especially don't be having babies for any man who's not your lawfully wedded husband, but one and the same. This is a value that I've learned based on all of this, based on life experience, that even if I weren't a Christian, I would still value saving my virginity for marriage for this simple reason: marry before you carry, and all the ramifications I've seen of older single mothers who are bitter and hit the wall about, and hit the wall and all of that, because they give younger women horrible advice. And they're never going to come out and say it because it's rivalry. It's like they never grew out of that childish rivalry from middle school or high school or whatever. I'm telling you this now because you, between the ages of 18 to 24, have the strongest foundation, even biologically. You're in your most fertile years, especially in the early 20s. You're in your most fertile years, the years least likely to have like complications and, birth defects, to get married and settle down with your own nuclear family. This is the ideal age bracket. And another thing is that older women who have hit the wall and did not marry before they carried see younger women getting married at a young age as a threat to them, because a lot of them got pregnant with their baby daddy's babies around that age. But the thing that they're not telling you is that they often were not married when they got pregnant with those men's babies. Marriage is a legal binding agreement that confers government benefits and protection for you as a woman and for any children that go forth from that wedlock, which is why marry before you carry is so important, not just for yourself, but for any kids that come from a marital union between you and a man. So that's another thing. Older, bitter single mothers who have hit the wall, even if some of them are even married. This is another thing you need to be warned of as a young woman between 18 to 23 to 24, especially if you're single and you're longing for marriage. Just because a woman who is older than you got married does not mean you need to be taking her advice, and does not mean she is the type of wife that you want to be when you get married. If she's a woman who got married to the right man, she found the right man after 2 instances of finding the wrong man and getting knocked up by his children, and then you don't want to take her advice because her fruit is not the fruit that you want produced. You want one marriage that lasts till death do us part, and you want one legacy. You want to share your bloodline with one man. You don't want to go from baby daddy to baby daddy and then get to a point where you expect or even feel the need to expect a man to step in to provide for a bloodline that's not his. Honestly, that's not biblical. Stepdaddying, you don't really see that in the Bible. You see adoptive daddying. Mordecai was Queen Esther's adoptive dad, but that wasn't adoption. That wasn't stepdaddying. So understand that older women, it's like I was so afraid of hurting other people's feelings that I don't think I ever would have been bold enough to say this when I was younger. But because their bad advice and selfishness and bitterness actually harmed me on more than one level, like I have gotten to a point where it's like, I have to tell younger people this because I needed to hear this when I was younger. You need to listen to the men when they warn you being a virgin is a good thing. Marrying as a virgin is a good and honorable thing. It will get you respect, not just among female peers. They wouldn't be jealous if they didn't see that as something respectable. They wouldn't be so bitter and all of that. But the men will also respect you for being a woman who marries before you carries. It shows discretion, prudence, wisdom, and all those things. Treat your body as holy and honor your temple. And the best time to do it is starting young, when you are 18. Don't get into the mindset that I'm going to live my life while I'm young and I'm going to be a hoe, I'm going to be a whore, I'm going to get ran through, I'm going to party and do all this stuff because I'm young and I want to have fun, because you will experience consequences. And the evidence is all the older, bitter women who I experienced as a 24-year-old virgin waiting for marriage, who, because they decided to live while they were young and have all that fun and enjoy their youth, it turned out not to be so enjoyable for them. Because if they were truly content and happy people, they wouldn't feel the need to embitter younger women and, discourage younger women from making wise decisions with their lives. The goal of this video is to encourage you that if you're an 18 to 23 to 24-year-old woman, is to use biblical wisdom. Understand that you are in your prime during those years, and it is better to use prudence in whatever decision you make over your body. And if you're going to take advice from women, don't let it just be any woman who sees you as a little sister or a daughter or anything. Let it be a woman whose stats and whose background matches the goals that you have for your life. For me, that looks like me remaining a virgin until wedlock, marrying and living, a long, happy life, seeing our third and fourth generations with my lawfully wedded husband, the love of my life. That's my number one for me. Marrying right the first time, doing things God's way the first time, and not leaving my bloodline behind a bunch of brokenness and hurt that my future children have to spend their lives recovering from because mommy didn't do it right the first time. That's my priority. So this is just an encouragement. If you are still young, understand that yes, there are jealous women. And the scary thing about the older women who did not marry before they carried, especially the single mothers, again, even if they got married later in life, is that because they're moms, they know how to lure children in because they're moms. They know how to, I notice they're very predatory, and they can use the excuse that, I see you as a daughter, to lure you into taking their bad advice. This is why young women need headship. You need a dad in your life. If you don't have the best relationship with your dad, you need a male leader in your life. If you're a single woman, if you're married, if you already have a husband, listen, obey your husband. That's what the Bible says. Wives are to be in subjection to their own husbands and submit to their own husbands as they do the Lord. This really isn't for you in that regard, because you're in a different place. I'm still unmarried, and so I'm talking specifically to the single girls. You need a dad. You need a spiritual leader who is a man in your life. Women in the Bible were never meant to live without the spiritual leadership of a man, whether the father or the husband. And so, yes, if you don't have the best relationship with your dad, that's why God has instituted male shepherds in the church, your pastor. But also, before you resort to trying to build a servant connection, try serving more in church under the leadership of your male pastor. Try finding a male blood family member, just a good man in your family who you respect, who has a solid, stable home of his own, who is being a good leader of his own wife and home. And but that's last resort. I'm sharing that as someone who struggled in my relationship with my dad when I was young, and know that not every girl has the ability to just submit to her own biological dad just like that all the time. But optimally, if your dad is still alive and if he's in your life, you've got to take your dad's leadership in your life seriously as young as you possibly can, because it's going to protect you from so many of the lies that these women who are older than you and who are bitter and have no self-awareness to understand that their fruit is the fruit of their own unhealed stuff. Your dad's leadership is going to protect you so much from taking their bad advice and from getting deceived. And so that is a full video for this one. Marry before you carry. And if you're between the ages of 18 to 23 to 24, you're very wise to avoid the counsel and mentorship of older women who did not do that. But yeah.